79, Sir Barry Gibb, the last surviving BG, stands in his Miami home surrounded by silence. The walls are covered with platinum records, the echoes of a life that once shook the world. Yet behind that glitter lies a heartbreaking truth. He is the last man standing, the last voice of a harmony that once belonged to four brothers. They sold over 220 million records. They defined an era. Their music, Staying Alive, How Deep Is Your Love, To Love Somebody, became the heartbeat of the world. But for Barry, that sound is now a ghost. One by one, the people who created it vanished. Andy, Maurice, Robin, and finally, his mother, Barbara. And today, when he whispers, "I'm the last leaf on the tree," it isn't poetry. It's confession. The confession of a man who has seen brilliance, betrayal, and unbearable loss, and somehow still found the strength to sing. But how did the boy who almost died in a boiling accident become the last survivor of one of history's greatest bands? And what secret pain does he carry behind that legendary falsetto? Because the truth behind Barry Gibb's survival is much darker than you think. Barry Gibb's story did not begin with fame or applause. It began with fire. Born on September 1st, 1946, on the Isle of Man, he arrived into a family with little more than hope. His father, Hugh, was a drummer who played in seaside hotels for spare coins, while his mother, Barbara, juggled love and poverty in equal measure. When Barry was not yet 2 years old, tragedy struck. A teapot tipped over, spilling boiling water across his tiny body. The burns were so severe that doctors whispered he had minutes to live. His mother refused to leave his bedside for months, holding his hand as infection set in. Against all odds, he survived, but the scars never faded. They covered his chest and arms, a permanent reminder that life could destroy you in a single careless second. Later, Barry would say, "I have no memory of it, only the marks that never left me." Those marks became the foundation of everything that followed, proof that survival would always come with pain. Yet tragedy wasn't finished. At age 4, he was lured by a stranger in an incident that left him traumatized, though unharmed. It scarred him in another way, a fear that lingered long after childhood faded. Through every move, from the Isle of Man to Manchester, then to Australia, instability followed the Gibbs like a ghost. Poverty was constant. His father played all night for pennies, his mother wept when food ran out, and Barry learned that the only thing that silenced hunger was music. At just 6 years old, he began humming tunes that carried him away from the chaos. With his brothers Robin and Maurice beside him, he discovered the one refuge that never left him: harmony. Even as a child, his scars burned when he sang, a reminder of what he had endured and what he would overcome. The boy who should have died became the boy who lived, and the fire that tried to destroy him became the fire that would one day light up the world. By the time Barry Gibb turned 11, music was no longer a pastime, it was survival. He gathered his younger brothers, Robin and Maurice, and formed their first group, the Rattlesnakes. They sang Everly Brothers covers in small halls across Manchester, dreaming not of fame, but of escape. The applause was rare, but the hope was constant. Then came the great gamble of their lives. In 1958, the Gibbs boarded a ship bound for Australia under a migration program that promised a new start. The family owned almost nothing, just a few suitcases and a shared dream that the music might save them. On that voyage, Barry watched the ocean stretch endlessly, not knowing it would carry him from poverty to immortality. In Redcliffe, Queensland, the three brothers began performing at a speedway between car races. Dust, gasoline, and noise filled the air, but when their voices rose together, the crowd fell silent. That moment changed everything. Within a few years, they were signed by Festival Records. Barry became the songwriter, the architect behind every lyric. He wrote about longing, love, and survival, the things he knew best. By 1967, their first UK single, New York Mining Disaster 1941, made people think it was a lost Beatles track. Then came Massachusetts, To Love Somebody, Words, songs that defined an era of heartbreak and hope. Barry's pen was unstoppable, his voice unmatched, his falsetto a new language of emotion. But as fame grew, so did the cracks. Endless tours drained them. Robin felt overshadowed. When Barry's song First of May was chosen over Robin's Lamplight, pride turned to silence, and the Bee Gees fell apart. Robin left, and Barry was left holding the weight of a dream collapsing in his hands. He released his solo song, I'll Kiss Your Memory, but it failed. For the first time, the boy who turned pain into melody faced a silence too deep to sing through. Yet even in failure, Barry refused to stop. When the brothers reconciled, they wrote, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart? A song born from their own wounds. It became their first US #1 hit, a poetic reminder that broken hearts could still make beautiful music. The scars of his childhood had become his gift. His fear had become his fire, and his hunger, his harmony. Barry Gibb was no longer the poor boy from Manchester. He was now the man writing the soundtrack of the world. The 1970s crowned Barry Gibb as a god of pop. When Saturday Night Fever exploded in 1977, his falsetto became the pulse of a generation. Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, How Deep Is Your Love? Three songs that sold tens of millions and redefined the sound of the era. The Bee Gees weren't just famous, they were untouchable. But fame, like fire, burns brightest before it consumes everything. By the dawn of the 1980s, the world that once adored them turned vicious. The Disco Sucks movement swept across America, crowds burning Bee Gees records in stadiums, mocking the very sound they'd once danced to. The brothers went from heroes to villains overnight. Barry later admitted, it felt like the whole world had turned its back on us. Behind the platinum smiles, exhaustion ruled. Years of constant touring had drained their spirits. Fame had become a machine that devoured their peace, and Barry, the eldest, carried the heaviest weight. Leading, writing, producing, holding everyone together while breaking quietly inside. But the greatest pain came not from strangers, but from blood. Andy Gibb, the baby brother Barry adored, rose to fame in the late 1970s with hits like Shadow Dancing and I Just Want to Be Your Everything. Barry had given him everything: songs, mentorship, love. He called Andy my baby brother with a tenderness that few ever heard. Yet the spotlight Andy inherited became his undoing. Drugs, isolation, and the pressure of success dragged him into a spiral. Barry tried to save him. Rehab, late-night calls, endless forgiveness, but fame's shadow was stronger. On March 10, 1988, just days after turning 30, Andy's heart gave out. Doctors called it myocarditis. Barry called it something else, heartbreak. At the funeral, the family was shattered. Barbara, their mother, clutched Andy's photo and screamed until she collapsed. Robin and Maurice stood beside Barry, their faces frozen in disbelief. And Barry, the man whose falsetto had lifted the world, couldn't sing a note. Silence conquered the singer. He later confessed, "It doesn't matter how many people love you. If you don't love yourself, it can all slip away." Andy's death left Barry hollow. The harmony that had once filled every room was replaced by an unbearable silence. And though the world still played Stayin' Alive, Barry felt anything but alive. If Andy's death was the first great crack in Barry's soul, what followed was the collapse of everything. In 1992, he lost his father, Hugh, the drummer who had once kept the family alive with rhythm. Barry said it felt like the earth had fallen away. But even that grief could not prepare him for what came next. In January 2003, Maurice Gibb, the quiet anchor of the Bee Gees, walked into a Miami hospital with stomach pain. Within hours, he was gone. A sudden intestinal blockage. No warning, no goodbye. The brother who had balanced Barry's fire and Robin's storm was dead at just 53. Barry replayed the moment in disbelief. A stomachache, a hospital visit, and then silence. He broke down on stage months later, saying softly, "The harmony is gone." Without Maurice, the music itself felt empty. But fate was not done. Robin, his twin in spirit, was diagnosed with cancer. For years, Barry sat at his bedside, whispering memories of their childhood, hoping for one last song together. Robin tried to smile, promising they'd sing again. But in May 2012, Robin Gibb's voice fell silent forever. At the funeral, fans lined the streets, holding old vinyl records like relics. Inside, Robin's coffin was carried to the haunting sound of "I Started a Joke." Barry stood motionless, pale, his eyes fixed on the coffin as if begging it to open. Beside him, their mother Barbara sobbed so violently that mourners feared she might collapse beside her son. It was the third child she had buried. From that day, Barry carried a loneliness no song could mend. He often said, "I feel like the last leaf on the tree." And when Barbara passed away not long after, that last thread to the family's beginnings was gone. No brothers, no parents, only memories, photographs, and silence. He would walk through his Miami home at night, past the gold records and guitars once shared among four brothers, and whisper to himself, "They should still be here." To the world, he was a legend. To himself, he was a survivor of a family that had given everything and paid the highest price. Today, at 79, Sir Barry Gibb lives in quiet reflection. The world still calls him a legend, knighted by the British Crown, the voice that turned falsetto into fire. But to Barry, fame has long lost its shine. He now wakes before dawn in his Miami home, takes slow walks by the water, and listens to the sea whisper what the world can no longer say. They're gone. His fortune, built on a lifetime of melodies, means little compared to the silence that fills the house once shared with laughter. Every corner still holds echoes of his brothers, Robin's sharp humor, Maurice's gentle warmth, Andy's bright youth. And yet through it all, one person has kept him from breaking completely: Linda Gray, his wife of more than 50 years. She was the one who stood beside him when the applause faded, the one who told him, "You are not alone," when he thought he couldn't sing again. Barry often says, "Linda saved my life." Their love, forged in storms, became the quiet proof that even after the world takes everything, love can still rebuild what's left. His hands ache from arthritis now. His falsetto, once effortless, trembles. But when he picks up the guitar and hums "To Love Somebody," the old magic flickers. His grandchildren sometimes gather around, clapping out of rhythm, laughing, the same laughter that echoed from his childhood home. Barry knows time is short. He's not afraid of it anymore. Because survival, he's learned, is not victory, it's testimony. Every Bee Gees song that still plays, "Stayin' Alive," "How Deep Is Your Love," "Words," is a message from those who are gone. And when Barry sings now, it's not for fame, not for charts, not even for memory. It's for them, Andy, Maurice, Robin, and for the mother who taught him how to hold on when life burned. He is indeed the last leaf on the tree. But as long as that leaf still trembles in the wind, the music and the love that made it will never die.